What's up, guys? This is Jimmy Retro in for ElGoji98, as he is still freaking out over the movie that we just watched, which is Godzilla Minus One. And I'll have to admit, I was actually shocked, speechless as well once the credits started to roll and all that, but yeah. This is our review of how this newest flick flared with us. So, let's dive in. Now, Godzilla Minus One just came out in the States, at least, on December 1st. It was released in 4DX and IMAX. And because there was no possible combination for either of them, and there was no IMAX theaters showing this movie, ElGoji decided to go for the 40X option, but because he didn't want to feel like, he decided to drag me along for the ride as well. Granted, this is my first 40X movie, considering that ElGoji has done a couple of them with some movies in the past, we'll just say. So I had no idea what I was expecting. I mean, I've seen the trailers, I've seen everything, and as ElGoji describes it, it's as if the first Godzilla movie was combined with the 1998 remake, the 2014 remake, and Shin Godzilla, as well as this one called Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah Giant Monsters All Out Attack. Way to roll off the tongue, isn't it? Well, I can't say for myself like what it felt, but having seen the Monsterverse of Godzilla, this is totally a step forward. So yeah, we were in the movies, we decided to go for the 4DX option, and oh boy, were we in for a ride. Not even the first 5 minutes, and already we're being tossed around in the seats, and as Godzilla looks to be really tiny in the first couple of minutes, but by the time the nuclear bombs happen in 1946 and all that, he mutates to the present G you see now. And that's another thing that got me, because I know a bit of basic knowledge on this. ElGoji is the scholar between us both when it comes to Godzilla, but there wasn't any mention of any nuclear bombs at all. No mention of Hiroshima, no mention of Nagasaki. It was everything Tokyo air raids, and for good reason, because if you guys recall, in 1945, the U.S. was already closing in on the Japanese archipelago. And to make sure that nothing stands in their way, let's just say they decided to firebomb Tokyo into pieces for a couple nights. The darkest of them, July 29th, 1945. And our main character, his most if not all his family ended up dying in those raids, and we get a grisly view of how it looked like from the ground. I mean, I've already seen the photos, whatnot, in history class, but this took a whole different level of wow. I was like stunned. And then another thing that hit me was the fact that at the time Japan was still under the Shinto system. As you get, so a little refresh on that. Basically, the populace think that the emperor at the time, which was Hirohito, aka Showa, he was known as a god, and they all worship him as his word is absolute and whatnot. And part of that Shinto code was so yeah, around the end of the war, Japan started to go full kamikaze, basically all or nothing. Now, I know it's a bad example, but if you've seen that one little clip on YouTube from this bad movie called Pearl Harbor, there was one little clip where it showed how the Japanese were thinking back in the era. And yeah, it was like that. And well, the main guy wasn't like that at all. Because for a second I thought that his playing was faulty and all that, but once that one woman shoved him away saying, "You're a disgrace. Why do I even talk to you?" That's when it set in that he was just bailing out because he didn't want to die so early. And that fear also cost him a bit of PTSD in the long run. But yeah, so far after that, he walks around the ruins and yeah, tries to get his life back in check, and suddenly a woman and a baby get into his life, and they decide to stick around after losing basically everything in the air raids in the last couple months. But yeah, and then there was a montage of them just rebuilding their lives, and there's where the main part of the movie kicks in. 1947. Yeah, I know Who Framed Roger Rabbit is already starting off in the other side of the Pacific, but in this side of the Pacific, Japan is occupied, the United States and the Soviets are in a Cold War. Basically, the US is controlling Japan, whilst not controlling Japan either, because in the movie, they keep going with nuclear testing, and if you guys know the infamous Baker test, the test that is just irradiated the monster and completely changed things for the worse. At the same time, the main guy decided to sign up for a mine removal service, unaware that he faces his own worst nightmare from 2 years back. And this time, he's back with a vengeance. And yeah, once we get to the part where there's a little bit of Jaws role reversal, what do I mean by that is, you know how in Jaws, the three guys chase down the shark with a barrel? Well, it's the opposite. Instead, Godzilla chases them with a mine tied to their boat. Not a pretty sight. And also brought me some callbacks to a certain horrendous remake where an imposter chases a group of people in a taxi all around a city. We'll just leave it at that. And boy was the theater shaking at that point, especially the part where the mines blow up. But yeah, his regenerative agent is among like the most sick things I ever saw. I mean, it was massive. There was like a huge chunk of exposed flesh just like regained in less than a second. And yeah, then there's a lot more stuff involving our main character and his PTSD, which many war veterans can relate if they have that many nightmares at night. I cannot say for sure on that front. I just can only speculate based on how he was reacting to said trauma. But also around that time, that's when the main Avenger like goes from 0 to 9,000. Godzilla shows up and destroys Ginza. And usually, whenever he releases an atomic breath, it is, well, most of us were just cheering and seeing him blast something, but this time around, it was dead silent. Because what we saw after he shot that atomic breath, it was as if he just spawned a nuke out of it. And the fallout just made it worse. And man, did the shockwave also just like left me so stunned, and I was like, what just happened? It just blew me away. I was speechless. I couldn't even think. And yeah. Then came the part where it started to go like Shin Gojira, because I know for a fact that after ElGoji dragged me to watch that movie with him, the part that stuck with me was when it was everyone working together and freezing him in this coagulant. Well, the same applied in this with a slight twist. Spoiler alert. So if you guys do not want to hear any spoilers, just mute it. Alright, you had your shot. So yeah, the same applied here, except for the fact that they decided to use his own weight against him or something like that. And basically like they're trying to get him in a bungee jump style where, if you guys know from the infamous implosion that happened in the Atlantic, there's a lot of pressure applying on you every 25 square feet you go down. So if you go down, say 1,500 meters, it's sayonara in 2-3 microseconds tops. That's exactly what they were doing to him. And the closing act was rather emotional, so to speak. This was like there were a couple of cliches used, but it also involved like getting over your own personal demons. Like they define it in the movie as like your own personal battle, your war, so to speak. And that's what his woman, the main character's woman, was telling him, like, you need to get over this war, yeah. Don't, something like that. That was kind of a bit emotional, and yeah, I was like speechless as well at that point. And ElGoji98 was the same thing, and by the end, let's just say it left off on a continuation on both the humans and the Godzilla side. But one little touch that I actually got to see was the fact that they used the American version of Godzilla's theme at the end. Like at the very end, where the credits were starting to roll, they used it. And wow. It was just like blown away seeing how the director actually applied the MonsterVerse theme into this. Well, then again, I think it shouldn't be surprising considering that ElGoji showed me on the wiki photos of the director, which is Takashi Yamazaki, in a photo with Gareth Edwards, the director of the 2014. Now, my point of view on this. It is the best Godzilla movie I have ever seen. It blew Godzilla vs. Kong out of water, which was my personal favorite. Mainly because I wanted to see Lizard vs. Monkey. Not to mention the special effects were like top notch. It actually looked like the Big G was like right there. He was right there in front of you. Or that could have just been the 40X on my leg. Because once the rampage began, it was like shaking all over the place. Like, for one thing, it was like we were swaying because of the boat scenes. Or when the atomic breath started, it was like violently shaking. It was like if we were there and we were just about to get blown up by that big heat ray, and yeah, that might have contributed to his really high review from my perspective, because oh boy, I have never felt that stunned after seeing an atomic breath. But yeah, the characters are actually decent at this point, and they tackled some pretty serious subject matter in the movie. Considering it takes place in 1947, in occupied Japan, and it was a time of change. It was very tumultuous, because all the Japanese knew at that point in time was loyalty, dedication, and willingness to see it through to the end. So in a way, it was as if World War II had a continuation as a monster movie, so to speak. But yeah, there's also a couple of things I've seen echoed from Shin Godzilla, like the old and the young, and the monster rampage, all that. Not to mention, there was a bit of an Endgame vibe in one of the scenes where a fleet of boats showed up to help once they all thought it seemed lost. But yeah, this was a movie of many complex emotions. But overall, it's a movie of like resilience, persistence, pushing forward, even at your lowest. Well, that's my perspective of the newest Godzilla movie, which if you guys haven't seen, I definitely recommend seeing it, especially if it's available as a 40x option, because I assure you will not be disappointed. It was just, there's a perfect balance of action, dialogue, and yeah, it's truly one of the Godzilla movies I have ever seen. And speaking of which, we also had a bit of a teaser for Godzilla vs. Kong New Empire, which was also cool, I guess, but still, after watching this movie, I completely forgot about it for like a couple hours. Especially because once we got out of the theater, I was like, we couldn't even speak, because it was that powerful of a movie. We couldn't even speak. We were just like, it was like if we were reacting as if we were going on a long run, long marathon, and at the end we're just so incredibly tired. That's how emotionally daunting that movie was. But in all retrospect, this has gotta be one of the finest G movies ever made. It is also the 70th anniversary project for some reason, because I know for a fact that we are still at 69 nice years of Godzilla. And they should have been respected to a certain year, because at this point, GVK, A New Empire, will be the 70th anniversary project. But yeah, this was like one of the most emotionally daunting movies ever made. I mean, because it had me questioning all the stuff they said throughout the movie. Like, yeah, I really cannot put it into words, but you just have to see it for yourself. You just have to see it. That's what I'm trying to say. Go see it, especially in IMAX or 40X, and you will not be disappointed. Well, the only disappointment will be if the nearest theater showing the movie is a long drive or bus ride away. That'll be the only disappointment. Well, anyways, Now, to read ElGoji's side of this story. Granted, him being a Godzilla fan, he'll probably be super biased. So this is all the stuff he left me, because at the time we were speechless and we just decided to write notes on how we felt after seeing it. You know, typical psychology stuff. For him, let's see. Dang. Yep. Well, in the notes I have, he says that it is the best monster movie of the 21st century. And that's a pretty bold take, because I feel like Shin Gojira has a shot, considering that that one was like a metaphor for events and the very slow governmental response that happened afterwards. It could be anything in the 21st century, from the 2011 tsunami to the, you know, the stuff that happened in 2020. Also, he was practically jumping up and down with glee when he saw the cues of old Godzilla tracks, especially during the final battle where they were just replaying the credits for Godzilla versus Destoroyah on a loop. And he was glad that there were no cheeky Showa roars and that they reused the old G54 roar, but he felt like they could have used the 2014 roar, which, to be fair, I honestly could see him with that roar, or the 90s roar from Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2. Not to mention that the story was actually engaging. He got a new perspective on how things were back in the 40s, and yeah, things like that. Basically, most of it's almost the same thing as I said a couple minutes ago, but ooh, that's an interesting take. Okay, here's what he wrote. He says this Godzilla is an allegory to how post-war Japan would be built, especially considering that Tokyo was literally in ruins, and the Ginza shot does not hold any better. And he loved all the references he did. Like, apparently there were some reporters that were at the top of the building. It was a callback to 1954. One of the characters' dialogue was a callback to Raymond Burr's character in 1956, where specifically the part where he's like, "I'm surprised that I'm here alive when I see millions of others not so lucky around me." Gotta admit, that line also hit me, but for a bit, because there were a couple of circumstances, so to speak, when I was thinking that same line. I didn't realize that it was from an old movie at the time, that is. But he loved all the callbacks, the references, and his similarities. He has found similarities, he said. Most notably, the GMK, where they all decided to fight Godzilla in a way that was unconventional. The youth were ordered to stand down. One of the anecdotes made by one of the men when it comes to battle, specifically, the greatest honor that a soldier would ever have is to never see battle. And yeah. Also, the fact that he was totally geeking out at the ending, which he found was really similar to GMK. I have to see that movie for myself, because on the ride home, he was just like ranting and ranting about how he found these callbacks to these movies and how they reused some old soundtrack, and yeah, but I was speechless. I I was tuning everything now. I was like, I just witnessed a piece of history. I just witnessed a piece of history. I just experienced it as well. I was like, that's how powerful the movie was in my eyes. But yeah, that was ElGoji98's perspective. If only he were here in the studio so he could share how it was with me. But yeah, bygones be bygones, I guess. Still, this was a great movie. I'd give it a 9 out of 10. Only because there was a bit of lack of closure for the characters at the end. Because it just ends abruptly. That's the only reason I gave it a 9 out of 10. Everything else, top notch. It was not even a movie. It was an experience. Especially if you're watching it in 40X. You felt like you were in an amusement park, right? And you're just seeing what's happening. And yeah. This is a movie that you should not miss. So watch it now while you still can, because right now it is out in both Japan and the United States. It released in Japan November 3rd, which was, according to ElGoji, Godzilla's birthday. Over here, released just this past week. And yeah, our stunned silence was why it took us so long to post a video review of that. And the show and the time of day we had to go to watch the movie, but don't tell ElGoji. But yeah, it will not disappoint. And that about does it. Because as you could probably guess, I'm still kind of all scrambled up with all that's happened. So yeah, that about does it for us. So what are you guys waiting for? Go out and watch the movie now. Now. Be it on a discount Tuesday or using a gift card by opening a Christmas present early or something. It does not disappoint. And we'll be back with more Godzilla updates in the future. So this is Jimmy Retro in for ElGoji98. And I'll see you guys next time.